Larry Jorgensen is a journalist who has spent nearly 3 years researching Coca-Cola stories which reveal how the world's most famous brand got started. And he's with us now. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Toby. Thank you. And I guess it's time for a good Coca-Cola, I guess.
Yes, I suppose I've got one in front of me right now. Now, what first gave you the idea to write this book?
Well, it's interesting. Where I live, I'm not too far from Vicksburg, Mississippi, where they actually first bottled Coca-Cola, and they have a small museum there.
Hmm.
And then, so I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I found out there was another one about 70, 80 miles away. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, that wouldn't be a nice travel adventure for someone. I think I'll write about those too. Well, as I got investigating the history of both of them, I found that Coca Cola history is very fascinating, and it's all over the United States and, in fact, all over the world.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is not a feature, this is a book. And actually, I've wrote the first book and wrote a sequel to it of all the interesting places that I discovered just because I went to look at a couple museums.
Yeah, and I suppose we should start talking about the history of Coca Cola because it's quite interesting because it started as a medicine, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And it's interesting that we know Coca Cola as a beverage in a bottle
Mm,
primarily or a can.
yeah.
Um, Coca Cola, when John Pemberton invented the syrup and later sold it to Asa Candler, they had no intention of bottling. It was sold at drugstore soda fountains, primarily as a sort of a quasi medical purposes.
Yeah.
And when the idea to bottle it was brought to their attention, they thought Asa Candler, who owned the syrup company at that time, thought it was a rather dumb idea, and it took a lot of convincing to get him to agree to allow Coca-Cola to be bottled. And actually, the place in Vicksburg, which is along the Mississippi River, they were bottling it on their own 5 years before Coca-Cola thought it would be all right to bottle it.
Yeah.
He had an old bottling machine, and he had the syrup that he was buying for his fountain at his drugstore. And he thought, if I could bottle it, I could get it to the people out in the country. So he started bottling it. And it was 5 years later when Coca Cola finally authorized to ambitious young attorneys the rights to bottle. And even at that time, they thought, you know, Asa Candler, the owner of Coca Cola, thought this is a rather dumb idea. And he sold them the rights to bottle Coca Cola everywhere in the United States except Mississippi for $1.
Wow.
And he told them, and he never collected the dollar, by the way. And he told them, if this doesn't work, don't come crawling back to me about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about it. But it sure worked, didn't it?
Yeah, well, of course, because it's now everywhere in the world, and it's probably, if there was a survey of people's favourite drinks other than alcoholic, Coca Cola would be number one.
It's been fascinating in doing the book, the reaction from people who just they have to have their Coca-Cola. They love the brand, and consequently, it's made the book very popular as well.
Yeah.
The what we've done with the book, we've dealt with that history of how the two gentlemen, and they were from Tennessee, got the rights to bottle. And then, what happened, they got back to their home in Chattanooga
Mm.
and they realized that they had the rights to bottle Coca Cola, but between the two of them, they only had $1,500.
Yeah.
And they thought, how are we going to bottle Coca Cola throughout the country? We only have $1,500.
Yeah.
And then the idea of, I guess you'd call it franchising.
Mm.
They thought, we have the territory. we will sell little pieces of the territory. And consequently, that really is how Coca Cola grew. It was all these would be bottlers, entrepreneurs, if you will, who thought, this is a good opportunity for me. I will invest a few dollars and I will start a bottling business. And that really is what created Coca Cola to grow as quickly as it did. At one time, there were over 1,200 bottlers of Coca Cola. Little people that bought the territory and actually made it all happen for Coca Cola.
Was it originally called Coca-Cola, or is that a kind of brand name that came about later?
No, it was originally called Coca-Cola.
Hmm.
And there's been a lot of, well, was there cocaine in it? What there was is the leaf, the cocoa leaf,
Yeah.
is processed, but it's not processed like when they process cocaine.
Hmm.
But the cocoa leaf and the cola nut were the key ingredients in the original formula. So it was obviously Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And they quickly got that name and it was improved upon from there. And there is no trace of cocaine in Coca-Cola. But at one time, there was a slight trace that came from the processing of the coca leaf, but that they've eliminated that real quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feel a bit uneasy knowing that it's from the same plant that cocaine comes from.
Right. And there are people who today will say that must be why I enjoy it so
Yeah.
much. That's not, but it has a unique flavor. Um, I don't know if you were able to see when they did the Pepsi Cola challenge.
Hmm.
Did that make it to England?
It sounds familiar. Is that where you blind taste and compare them?
Right. You were offered a chance to taste both. You didn't know which was which. And Pepsi was actually winning that
Yeah.
challenge. And what happened, um, that's what caused Coca Cola. You may recall they came out with a new Coca Cola.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was a disaster. But what happened, they were responding to people who were approving Pepsi. And the whole secret to that is Pepsi is a sweeter beverage.
Yeah.
And if you take a first drink of either one, your natural tendency would be to go with the sweeter one.
Yeah.
But as far as long term enjoyment, the Coca Cola wins out, but Coca Cola didn't realize that, and they created the new Coke, and it was sweeter, and people didn't like it. And it finally took 2 years for Coca Cola to realize that people wanted their old Coca Cola back.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the new Coke.
So is that why on some older bottles it'll say original Coke?
Absolutely. And in fact, they do a bottle right now. It's a 6.5 ounce bottle, or I guess it's actually an 8, but it looks like the old original 6.5. And on there, it'll say the original flavor. They want
Yeah.
people to know that it is the original flavor.
Yeah, I suppose so. So how long did it take you to write this book then?
Well, it took a little over 2 years, about two and a half, because I am a journalist, but I have other opportunities in journalism where people will pay me money, and this was a
Yeah.
gamble.
Hmm.
So I had to take advantage of those opportunities as well. It was not a full time adventure, but it took up a great deal of my time. I traveled a lot. I visited many of the places that are mentioned in the book. I got some wonderful interviews with families who have been bottling Coca Cola for 4 and 5 generations
Yeah.
and learned stories that I think were the first time they were ever told.
Hmm.
And we were able to put them in the book.
Yeah. Did you find out any interesting facts that you didn't find online and probably wouldn't be able to find anywhere in the internet?
Well, I think one of the interesting facts concerns the color, the light green shade of the original Coca-Cola bottle.
Oh, yeah.
And that actually occurred, they had a contest to determine who would produce the Coca-Cola bottle.
Hmm.
And they wanted a bottle that when people picked it up, when people saw it, they would know it is Coca-Cola. So
Yeah.
that bottle was created in 1905 by a glass company in Indiana. Well, it so happened that glass company was getting the sand to make their glass from a little quarry that they owned about 50 miles away. And when they
Hmm.
made the bottle, because of the mineral content included in that sand, it had that light green tint to it.
Yeah.
Coca Cola was extremely happy with that. And in fact, originally they called it German green, and then they changed it to Georgia green in honor of their home state. But nevertheless, from that time on, when other bottlers were given the opportunity to create the bottle, Coca Cola insisted that it be that green color. And they would tell them, if your sand does not contain the proper mineral content, you must add it so that all the bottles will have the light green tint to them.
Wow.
And it was strictly by not by accident, but by happenstance that
Yeah.
that's the way the bottle was made.
Yeah, it's interesting they went to that much effort. And Coca Cola has had such a big impact on our culture, not just the drink itself, but am I right in thinking that Coca Cola kind of invented Santa?
Absolutely. I was going to mention that because I'm sure you see at Christmas the big Coca-Cola trucks
Oh,
that are all
yeah.
decorated. And Santa, as we know Santa, the image that we have of Santa was actually created by an artist who worked for Coca-Cola in 1931.
Hmm.
And that image has existed since. In fact, here in the States 2 years ago, um, the post office put out 4 Christmas stamps that each of them had the Coca-Cola Santa on them. It didn't say Coca-Cola, but it was each a different version of the Santa created by Coca-Cola.
Ooh.
I always say that Coca-Cola kidnapped Santa Claus.
Yeah. Does that mean that Coca Cola holds trademark of that Santa design and anybody who uses that could get sued by them?
That's right. They trademarked all of those particular Santas, although I think they're very cautious about doing anything that would, be negative to the idea of Christmas.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of people that use that. It's similar, to the script of the Coca-Cola logo.
Yeah.
When I did the book, I had to get permission to use that logo, and I also had to get the book approved by the Coca-Cola Corporation so that I could use the logo and publish what I had found. They're very protective of that, and rightfully so. That was the main reason the bottle was created. Was there were too many people that were starting to make colas,
Yeah.
and there was confusion because the bottles were not uniform. You weren't really sure if you were getting a Coca Cola or a Churro Cola or what you were getting,
Yeah.
and that's a trademark that they protect very vigorously.
Mm. And Coca Cola as a company have kind of expanded because they've bought out some other companies and they've got subsidiaries and make different fizzy drinks. And for example, they've recently bought Costa Coffee, a coffee shop in the UK.
Right.
So, what made them want to branch out and do other stuff like that? Because coffee seems a world away from Coca Cola.
Well, I think it's similar to what you're seeing in a lot of industries, and a lot of it, like here in the United States, they own the Minute Maid orange juice, and they
Yeah.
recently bought a company that makes a milk, a very pure milk,
Mm.
and It's just the case of putting more product on the shelf. You've got the shelf availability and you've got the network of distribution.
Yeah.
Why not utilize it? You see it in brewing. You know, the breweries that have combined and they're selling several different brands, and their distributors are also reaching out and selling even more brands. I mean, you look at here in the United States, Pabst Blue Ribbon. Uh, they have they must have 4 or 5 different brands of beer
Yeah.
that they distribute. It's just to really keep the company growing, and as you know, as tastes change,
Mm.
just they want to stay up with the tastes. And tastes have definitely changed for beverages and what people want. And you're going to see more of that. You're going to see, Coke came out with all the diet Cokes and
Yeah.
all the flavored Cokes, and depending on your taste, some of them I like and some of them I don't.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, where are we able to have a little read of this book and purchase it and do everything we want to do with it?
Well, the easiest way to get the book is through the website, which is simply the Coca-Cola Trail.com.
Mm.
Um, we're very prompt at getting books out. We had a large number of them went out this morning, and that's the simplest way. And if you do it that way, I'm actually able to sign the book and would even personalize it if the person wanted that. They
Mm.
are available at many of the different stores, and not a lot, unfortunately, in England. Maybe you can help me there,
Maybe.
but we have sent them all over the country. We
Wow.
have sent them a lot to Australia. There's a very active Coca-Cola collectors group in Australia,
Oh.
and we've sent many books there. I am doing, of all things, an interview next week with a radio station in Dubai,
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
they have people there that are interested in Coca-Cola and the book. So,
Yeah.
but the simplest way is go to the website, the Coca-Cola Trail.com. We'd love to welcome your listeners to it, and we would send them a special message.
Great. It's been great having you on the show today. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Toby. I really appreciate the opportunity.